Hello and welcome to the Product Marketing Festival. We have some fantastic sessions on the agenda for you today, but before we jump in, I have a very exciting announcement to make. The Product Marketing Awards are back for 2022 and I'm delighted to announce that nominations are now open. We received a whopping 181 new unique nominations last year, and this year we want even more PMM pioneers to be recognised. We have 7 top-notch categories for you to get involved in, and we can't wait to shout about the incredible product marketing talent within our community. The categories are Product Marketing Leader of the Year, Product Marketing Team of the Year, Product Marketing MVP of the Year, Product Marketing Newcomer of the Year, Positioning and Messaging Maestro of the Year, Product Launch of the Year, and Top Companies to Work in Product Marketing. Nominations are now open but must close on August 19th. So what are you waiting for? Spread the word, get your nominations in and celebrate those product marketing superstars that continue to go the extra mile. We'll be sharing a link to the nomination page in the chat throughout the day, so keep a lookout for that. We're also here if you have any questions, so please feel free to reach out via Slack or email. Now, after all the excitement, I just want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, speakers, and you, our lovely audience, for joining us today at the festival. Please make the most of these sessions by asking your questions and sharing your feedback in the comment section of the video. So with that, let's get back to the sessions.
Hi, my name is Daniel Cooperman, and I work in product marketing at Atlassian. I've been in product marketing for well over 15 years, and I've been the first product marketing hire at a company. I've been the only product marketer at a company. I've been part of bigger teams. I've also built my own teams over my career in product marketing. And in the next few minutes, I want to talk to you about getting shit done in product marketing and how to develop good habits to get the most important work done without burning out. Now, when you look at product marketing job descriptions, here's a very good example of what you're going to see. Search on Google or on LinkedIn. All of those skills that are out there, you need to have knowledge of this, experience with that, communication, slide work, enablement. These are all great, but there is one ability on every hiring manager's list that typically doesn't show up on the job description itself, and it trumps all of the other skills and abilities, which is getting things done. Of no use is your great branding skills or your experience delivering presentations if you can really get the work done. And there's a lot of things getting in the way of people today in just getting stuff done, and burnout is one of the major causes of frustrations and people just like not being able to do things. And you'd feel like we have so many tools today at our disposal. Why is this happening? Research after research has been telling us people are feeling overworked and they're feeling exhausted. It's not even the end of the day, and after the 5th Zoom meeting, you just can't take it anymore. Now, why is that? So let's take a step back and really understand what's going on here. And one thing I did is I sent out a survey at my company to the product marketing team, and I've asked people to be honest and really tell me like what is happening during those meetings. Are you always 100% focused on the meeting? You have everything else shut down? Are you focused, but when there's a notification on Slack or an email pops up, you go and check that out? Are you checking really like notifications and messages every few minutes? Or are you like all the time paying attention to the meeting, but also looking at the messages? Now, take a moment. Think about this. How would you have answered this survey? Well, the way that the team that I work with answered is fairly interesting. And most people, they do realize that they are focused on a meeting, but when there's a notification, they do verge their attention off and they take a look at it. Some people are checking a few times during the meeting, and some brave souls actually said that they are checking messages all the time. So this interruption of your attention for a meeting has a damaging effect in your productivity. And when you add up all of the time, all of the meetings that you have, and the fact that you're actually shifting your attention, that adds up in terms of the fatigue and the frustration that people are feeling. So context switching, right, is almost like having a bunch of TV screens that you have to constantly move over and see what's going on every time. Replace the TV screens with Slack, email, Zoom meetings, Google Docs, etc., and you get the idea. If you're trying to get a presentation done for the meeting tomorrow and suddenly you see the new email that pops up, that is brain power that's being diverted to another task. Even if you're at home and you're working and you're focused, but the doorbell rings, that by also changes your brain and from focusing on one thing and now switching over to another task or another activity that you have to do. Um, on average, actually, takes people about 9.5 minutes, according to some research, to get back into a productive workflow after having to switch between digital apps. And this particular research also talked about how because of people are switching between apps so frequently, most of them are feeling less productive, and also a good percentage of people are feeling fatigued. So switching apps causes fatigue. Another interesting research that talks about the cost of interrupted work also says that because of the interruptions that we're having, and sometimes we're doing to ourselves, right? So if you're in the meeting and you are switching without any notification popping up over to Slack to see what's the latest, or is there any important email, it's also adding to stress, frustration, that feeling that you have, that unsurmountable workload, and also the pressure to get things done faster because you don't have enough time in the day to get things done. Now, how do we manage all of this? Well, time management has been around for decades, right? And if you look back at a couple hundred years ago on Benjamin Franklin in 1791, actually published in his autobiography, and he shared with the world his own philosophy about this, and he talked about time management, and this is an example of how he views his time and how he makes himself productive, which was by blocking off chunks of time, right? Most recently, we also had Stephen Covey that came out with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People back in the 80s and was tremendously successful because he was giving us some really good processes for how to think about priorities in our lives and in our work environment. And one of the interesting things that came out of that work that he did was the priority matrix that you see here on the screen, which really forces you to think, are you spending more of your time on things that are not urgent and not important, like you're wasting your time, or you're spending your time on things that are very important, but they are not urgent? So how are you looking? How are you really spending your time? So if you take a look at this quadrant, and now you look at your calendar, and you start plotting things, how much time are you spending in each of those quadrants, that will also give you a good indication of how effective you are in terms of managing your priorities. Now, fast forward now to the 90s, right? And now we have David Allen getting things done method, which I'm a really big fan. I've used it for years. And David Allen now helped us rethink work intake and how we prioritize things. And he talked about how we need to capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage with information in a way that's going to take it out of your head into a system so you can actually be productive. And more recently, back in 2019, I believe, Carl Newport came up with Deep Work, which is a tremendously good book. I highly recommend it. And he's also talking about also borrowing from some of the other previous work and adding up to that, looking at how you're capturing and organizing information around your life, professional and personal, but also thinking about planning in terms of how you do quarterly planning, how you're planning your week, and how you plan for your day to be productive. Now, let me also pause here for a minute and say I'm not, doing justice for any of those authors by just simplifying their work in those key bullet points. And I do recommend that you go back and you read their books, and you're going to see. So, what I want to share with you is what has worked for me in terms of looking at work and prioritizing things. And my intent is also not to tell you that one system is better than the other, but there are different ways to think about it. You're going to have to try a few different things to see what works for you. Now, what I'm going to show you is how I've used all of those different methods into my professional life as a product marketer to get things done. The first thing that I'm going to tell you is breaking down work. So that's just good project management principle in general, and also part of what like agile software development has been telling us now for years, which is you got to think about what is the smallest unit of work that you can manage. And let's take like something that typical product marketing does. So slide presentations, right? We leave and brief slide presentations every day. So when we look at the final outcome, which is the final slide deck, to get to that, right, of course, you're going to have to first maybe create an outline, and then you do a rough draft maybe. There's a first version for review. You share with people, you get comments, create like so there's this process of creating, refining everything until you have the final deck that you can either publish or present. Now, have you ever found yourself blocking time, let's say a couple hours, to work on something, only to notice that, well, oh my God, time has gone by and I haven't really made a dent? Well, that's because you failed to properly break down the work. So the first step in any way of thinking about work is break it down into the most atomic piece that you can, like the most manageable, smallest size, so that you can start like thinking about what you need to do to get that done and go to the next step. I'll share something with you as well, which is prioritizing work. And what I did before, right, is something that looks exactly what you have here on the screen, which is a typical work week that I had before. I would start breaking things down into manageable pieces of work, work items, and I'll add all of those to a big to-do list. And then I would block chunks of called focus time, and I had several like project-specific meetings throughout the week, one-on-ones with my team, company this, town halls, trainings, etc. I tried to block lunch sometimes, and sometimes it was successful. But then when I got to the focus time, I would then go to the to-do list, right, that I had created and start working on one item after the other. And the problem with this is it gives you an impression of progress because you go through your to-do list and during your focus time, you're marking things off one by one, but it's just an impression, right? Because the rest of my week was really overrun with meetings, and in a lot of cases, and I don't know if that's the same way in your company or not, but when people looked at my calendar and they saw focus time, meetings started getting blocked over focus time because they think, well, you have 2 hours of focus time. It's okay if I take 15 minutes of that or 30 minutes for us to actually do some work or have a meeting. So the focus time always ended up being shrunk, and things start getting overrun by meetings after meetings. So my point here is you got to rethink the way you're doing your to-do lists. And it can't just be a list of items. And it can also, I think, just be a list of items that you then prioritize when you have time to work on it. What you actually have to do first is to break it down, of course, into chunks of work, like the most atomic, the smallest work item that you can think of. And then you have to add a specific time frame. Like how long do you think it's going to take you to do, let's say, the outline and the draft and on and on and on and on. And you can see that just by doing that by itself, maybe a presentation that you thought might take a couple hours, well, when you add up all of those hours and the time that you have, it's more than that, right? And this also forces you to think about the work that you need to do and the time that you need to block to complete that. And you do the same thing with every single item on your list. Some items are already in atomic form, right? Like read a report or submit an expense report. It might just take 15 or 30 minutes, but you gotta count for that time and you gotta break it down. Then the next step on this is what's called time boxing. Again, this is nothing new. Benjamin Franklin was doing that way back in the day, but that's the forcing function for you to get things done. You put all of those action items in specific places in your calendar along the week. So the outline for your presentation might be done on Monday morning, and the first draft you want to start working on that maybe in that afternoon or on Tuesday. And the important thing is just to get that stuff in your calendar. Now, why not just block, let's say, more focus time and go through the list? Well, there are a couple problems. Like, as I said, um, people end up scheduling things on top of your focus time. So it happens, even if you tell them not to. But also, when you get to that focus time on your calendar, you don't want to spend brain cycles just going through a huge to-do list and having to decide, oh, what do I do now? That by itself already takes brain power away from completing a task. You may also look at the list and decide, you know what, I'm not in the mood for item number 1, although it's very important. Let me jump into item number 5 because I think this is going to be easier. I'm in a creative mood right now. Well, it just doesn't work. You start skipping stuff and you end up not having enough time. And by having those things as meetings in your calendar, like you see here on the screen. So when you do away with focus time, I'm now blocking time for creating the presentation, for lunch, for updating the battle card, for reviewing the report. It's going to force you to just not to think about what you need to do. It's just like, oh, 8:30, 11:30, I need to create a presentation. Let's get into that. 12:30, oh, now I need to do what? Update a competitive battle card. Okay, let's get into that. But hold on, Daniel, you may say. Now, what if I am working on something and instead of, for example, that presentation outline taking 30 minutes that I allocated, it ends up taking 2 hours? Well, as the task that you're working on takes longer to complete, you have one of 2 things that you can do, right? You can either continue working on it, like unless you have like a hard stop because there's a meeting or something else coming up. Continue working on that. You can definitely eat up on the next task if you feel like you have to complete that, and then you have to reshuffle things at the end of the day, or you can allocate more time for it for the next day. So the point of this is not to have a rigid system that if I don't complete in 30 minutes, I'm screwed. No, the point of this is to start helping you organize your time so you can really have the power to focus your brain on that specific task. And you have to adjust the system so that it works for you and it works with you. And we're going to talk about what happens also in a couple of slides about reviewing your day and how do you organize things if they don't go according to plan. I think the key element here is really like if you are used to just blocking like focus time, you might realize that may not work very well to just get things done because of people blocking stuff over, tasks taking longer to complete, and the brain power that it takes for you. So my suggestion is just blow up, do away with just those focus times, and let's start like time boxing and blocking your calendar for very specific things. Now, another important thing here to think about is what Carl Newport calls a capture system. David Allen also has a similar thing for this. And what that means is you have to have a way to capture information, and it could be like pen and paper, Evernote, Confluence, Trello, whatever electronic system that you want, or manual system. For example, I happen to use Microsoft OneNote because I like how you can organize all your notes in tabs, much like a real binder. And what you do is during all of the meetings that you have throughout the day, you take notes and you pay special attention to action items and things you need to follow up on. So the report that Mary said she was working on and it was going to share with you after the meeting, well, make a note. You need to follow up with her on that. Your boss asked you to draft a proposal and share by Thursday. Well, make a note. So the end result is a series of notes and action items. All of the emails you get or Slack message, you do the same, right? So you read, decide what needs to get done, and add to your note-taking system. Now, as you're adding stuff to your notebook or Evernote or OneNote, whatever, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you gotta go through that and review all of those key actions and the to-dos and identify how important they are, how long each of them is going to take, and then review your calendar and allocate time in your calendar. So this is a habit you gotta have to have. So at the end of the day, to review all of your notes, all of your action items, and start rethinking about your priorities for the rest of the week or for the next week. Um, Here's a couple examples, right? Like that I mentioned. Trello is a great tool because it allows you to have columns on next actions, things you're waiting for, or by projects even. This is a screenshot of my organization in OneNote where I create like different tabs for meetings and talks with sales, one-on-ones, etc., etc. And I have even like sub tabs within those tabs so I can better organize myself. And at the end of the day, I go through it and I see exactly what needs to get done. Now, all of this scheduling and note taking, that can be a lot. So that's why there's another very important concept, something else that's added to the system, right? And this is something that I'm taking from Carl Newport that he popularized in the Deep Work book. And he calls this a daily shutdown routine. And I mark it on my calendar for the last 30 minutes of my day. And that's when I look at my notes from the meetings, I look at my calendar, see what was I able to get done, what got pushed, right? Because sometimes you're working on something that takes longer. What had to be reshuffled because of reprioritization during the day, because things happen, right? Like that's life. And then I review my schedule for the rest of the week. And then you look at, okay, action items that you took notes of during the day, what got pushed and everything, reshuffle your calendar for the rest of the week so you can reprioritize things. So you may have to move some things around. So let's now take a closer look at what that looks like and some specific examples, right? So the question is then, how much is too much, right, in terms of time boxing? So you could have your entire calendar, let's say the screen here on the left, fully blocked with every single thing you need to do. I block 2 hours for the slide presentation, 30 minutes for this. I have a meeting here, like fully booked. Or should you have some free time for other people, right? So here's the thing. We first talked about how context switching is bad. And the other problem is if you're working on a very, very demanding task, something that takes a lot of brain power, you can't really keep doing it for more than like 4 hours at a time. And that's scientifically proven because your mind starts wondering. If I need to crunch some, let's say, market analysis data, it won't do me good to block an entire day to do that, because after a few hours, I'm going to start losing steam. Now, the other problem is if I fill my entire day with different kind of work, that is also sapping my energy because I'm going to be switching every 30 minutes, like from one task to another, and it's also going to deplete. So there needs to be a balance. Now, as I schedule my work, I try to account for when I need to have meetings, which can serve as a good buffer, right? For example, between brain-intensive tasks. And sometimes I leave time empty on purpose so that someone else can add a meeting to the day because, life, like it happens. What I've also been doing, which I highly recommend, is to schedule breaks. And when I say schedule breaks, it's not to leave time in between, free time in between meetings, but schedule a break, like a meeting invite. I'm going to be like walking around the block. Like what I call my break is refresh time, when I need to get up from the desk, walk around the block, or go grab a coffee, or just look outside the window and really like refresh my brain. And you gotta schedule time for mental breaks, for lunch, for whatever works for you. So that's something to keep in mind. You gotta leave some time, and you also gotta rethink how you're blocking and not go super crazy, right? On blocking every single 30-minute increment on your calendar, but you have to see what's going to work for you. Different types of tasks that require different type of brain power. So you may also start thinking about how you want to allocate, for example, your one-on-ones, and you may want to do them all in one day so that you have that mindset of doing it, or presentation, or if it's data crunching, or whatever that is, so that you start like seeing what works best for you. Another key point of this is there's times in the day where you're going to be more, your brain's going to be better for data tasks or creative tasks. So you're also going to have to see what works well for you. But again, like the key point here is start allocating tasks. So don't overschedule. leave some time for ad hoc meeting requests, but do block time also for what? This is another important point. Stop checking email, stop checking Slack if you're doing something else. So if I'm working on that presentation, I want to shut off Slack, I want to shut off email, and I want to work on that for the next 30 minutes, 2 hours, whatever time I have blocked. And then I want to have some time blocked also to check that. So I have on my calendar specific times in the day when I say catch up on communication or catch up on messages. Nothing is going to explode, right, if you don't check Slack at that same very specific time. You gotta block time just to focus on the work. One tip I'll give you, it's there's an app that I've been working, that I've been testing, and I find it fantastic because all of this time of looking at your to-do list and saying, should I do that on Tuesday or should I do that on Thursday? Well, there's this app called Reclaim.ai that I highly recommend. I think is fantastic, which it helps you do exactly this. You add to the app all of your action items, how much time you need, how do you want to block your time. So if I have, let's say, a presentation that I know is going to take 2 hours and a half or 4 hours to do, I can tell the app to block, let's say, 45-minute blocks across my calendar, and it will automatically schedule the time for when I don't have meetings. And it then is going to also protect my time, and it has different settings that allows you to be more protective or less protective of the time. So it does help you in terms of speeding things up and not having to think too much about moving things around your calendar. So highly recommend the app. It's super good. Another question that comes up is, well, how do I resolve meeting requests over time block for work, right? So one issue you're going to find is that people will still send you meeting invites on top of stuff that you had planned on doing. Now, that's okay. Again, life, it happens. So you have two things that can happen, right? One is you need to check whether the time that you had blocked for that particular task really needs to happen during that specific day and time. So for example, if I have to deliver a report tomorrow and I had blocked, let's say, 2 p.m. today to do it, if a meeting shows up at that same time, I would decline the meeting, right? Or I will ask for the meeting organizer, hey, can you move it? Like, this is the only time I have to finish this, and I really need to finish this. And this may surprise you if you ask the meeting organizer to move a meeting to another day or time. In many cases, they will do it. Now, of course, if there are 15 other people in that meeting, it may not be possible to move. But then, if there are 15 other people in the meeting, do you really need to be there, or can you just catch the recording, ask them to record the meeting for you? Now, another question that comes up is, okay, why do you need to block time, or do I need to block time for things such as read a report or check email? Well, I have done this, like work catch-up time blocks, which for me is code to check Slack and check email. And that's because what people don't realize is that the amount of time in a day that you have to actually do work is reduced, right? Because of all of the other things you need to do, like reading reports, checking email, checking messages, talking to people. So the best you can do with your sanity and to your sanity is to make sure that you block time for those things. So yeah, I'm not going to reply to emails or Slack messages ASAP. I'm going to be doing something else, but in an hour, people know that I might have time to do that. So just think about how you want to organize. The other important thing is you're organizing your day, your time, is how much of your time is spent on each of those quadrants that we talked about. Always keep that in mind. If you start seeing yourself spending too much time in meetings that are not amounting to anything, you may want to reshuffle things. The other part of this that I think is interesting is when you look at the time that you have, right? On the left side here of the screen, you can see key projects, routine work, growth and development, administrative work. And this is the way that I tell my team to think about things. And why is that? Well, a lot of research, and this is an example from Zapier, they talk about how 18% of knowledge workers are spending less than 1 hour a day on core job functions. So this is mind-blowing. You are hired as a product marketer to do product marketing. If you're not doing your work and you're spending only 18%, I'm sorry, but like, why were you hired, right? 81% spend less than 3 hours a day of creative work. Again, this is mind-boggling. And if you're spending 5 hours checking messages, apps per day, what are you doing during those 5 hours? Like, so the way that I tell my team to think about it is on the left side, about 50% of your time at least should be spent on key projects. So if you look back on your calendar, you should have time blocked to spend on key projects. Then you have about 30% or so on routine work, right? Things that pop up, people have questions. Growth and development, 5 to 10% of your time on growth and development. Are you reading? Are you attending training sessions? And there's always administrative work that should not be more than, let's say, 5% of your time. Expense reports, talking to people about specific things, HR. It doesn't matter. Like, there's administrative work that you need to do. I know that. But if you're not spending your time, again, let's go back to the quadrants there, which is a similar thing that I'm trying to instill right on the teams, is how much time I'm really spending on projects. And you cannot be on that 18% of work spending less than 1 hour on your core job function. So let me give you a tip here. When you're in the Zoom meeting and you feel like the meeting is not amounting to anything, here's some things that you can do. Tell people, sorry, I have to jump to another call. Bang, drop it. Oh, sorry, I need to drop. I'll catch a recording later. Drop the call. Or, oops, my internet connection is stable. I'm sorry, I'm up. Drop the call. Now, I'm being facetious here, right? Of course, jokes aside, part of your job is also to understand priorities and if your time is being well used. If you're on a call and the call is not being effective, instead of switching, again, like why people are switching to Slack and to email during the Zoom calls, remember that first poll I showed you, is because they don't feel the meetings is important, that they don't feel like they have anything to say in the meeting. So instead of going for multitasking, context switching, like you have a meeting, someone is talking to you, and you're now checking Slack or doing some work, that is not good. Your brain is divided. Drop the meeting and go to the work. Now, final words of wisdom here. So this system is not foolproof, right? And you have really to change the way that you take notes, that you prioritize tasks, that you use time boxing, and the way that you're leveraging your calendar. You also have to get better at saying no. Just say no to people when they invite you to meetings and you simply don't have the time. So one other advantage of this method that I just showed you is that as you get better at listing your work and assigning durations, you can have a very honest conversation with your boss to see, if you see that you simply cannot find time enough in the week to get things done. So it becomes a much easier conversation if you show the list of work items that you have, how much time that you need in the week to get them done, versus how much time that you actually have available in the week because of all of the meetings or all of the other work that you're being assigned to. And people complain all the time. I don't have enough time in the day to get the work done. But if you actually show the evidence, your manager will not only thank you, but they will help you find the time to by prioritizing other things, deprioritizing, or they will have to ask for more resources to help you out. So part of managing burnout is organizing your work so that it doesn't cause you stress. And this means less context switching, more focus during your meetings, like close email, close Slack, better time boxing, and the willingness to say no to things. And yes, also blocking time for breaks in the day so that you can recharge. Make it a habit. It's not going to work the first time. It took me a while to balance things out and understand what works and doesn't work. Sometimes I slip, and then I have to think back on why the day was not productive. I didn't time box. I didn't say no to things. So I hope you got some ideas from my presentation that you can try tomorrow. And I'm really curious about what works and what doesn't work for you. Also, if you're interested in doing more reading on your own, I highly recommend those books. So Deep Work by Cal Newport, Getting Things Done by David Allen, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, and there's a bunch more. So take a look at it, but remember, use what worked for you. Just make it a habit, say no to things, and let's do great work. You can find me online, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I really appreciate you spending the time today to watch my presentation. Thank you so much.